Shalom, and today we are doing Genesis chapter 14. And it came to be in the days of Amraphel, sovereign of Shinar, Arnoch, sovereign of Elasar, Kendora, Omar, sovereign of Elam, and Tidal, sovereign of Goyim, that they fought against Bera, sovereign of Saddam, Bishar, sovereign of Amorah, Shinab, sovereign of Admah, Shemabar, sovereign of Seboim, and the sovereign of Bela, that is Seor. All these joined together in the valley of Siddim, that is the Salt Sea. 12 years they served Kedorlaomer, and in the 13th year they rebelled. And in the 14th year, Kedorlaomer and the sovereigns that were with him came and struck the Rephaim in Ashtaroth, Karnaim and the Zizim in Ham, and the Emites in Shawah, Kerathaim, and the Horites in their mountain of Seir, as far as El Paran, which is by the wilderness. And they turned back and came to An Mishpat, that is Kadesh, and struck all the country of the Amalekites, and also the Amorites who dwelt in Hastion Tamar. And the sovereign of Sodom, and the sovereign of Amorah, and the sovereign of Admah, and the sovereign of Seborim, and the sovereign of Bela, that is Seor, went out and joined together in the battle in the valley of Siddim against the Kedorlaomer, sovereign of Elam, and Tidal, sovereign of Goyim, and Amraphel, sovereign of Shinar, and Arok, sovereign of Elasar, 4 sovereigns against 5. And the valley of Siddim had many tar pits, and the sovereigns of Sodom and Amorah fled and fell there, and the remainder fled to the mountains. And they took all the good of Sodom and Amorah and all their food and went away. And they took Lot, Abram's brother's son, who dwelt in Sodom, and his goods, and left. And one who had escaped came and informed Abram the Hebrew, for he dwelt by the terebinth trees of Mamre the Amorite, brother of Eshcol, and brother of Aner, and they had a covenant with Abram. And when Abram heard that his brother was taken captive, he armed his 318 trained servants who were born in his own house, and went in pursuit as far as Dan. And he and his servants divided against them by night, and struck them and pursued them as far as Hobah, which is on the left of Damascus. So he brought back all the goods, and also brought back his brother Lot and his goods, as well as the women and the people. And after his return from the striking of the Kedorlaomer and the sovereigns who were with him, the sovereign of Sodom came out to meet him at the valley of Shawah, that is the sovereign's valley. And Melchizedek, sovereign of Shalem, brought out bread and wine, Now he was the priest of the Most High El. And he baruched him and said, Baraka be Abram of the Most High El, possessor of the Shemayim and the earth. And baraked be the Most High El, who has delivered your enemies into your hand. And he gave him a tenth of all. And the sovereign of Sodom said to Abram, Give me the people and take the goods for yourself. But Abram said to the sovereign of Sodom, I have lifted my hand to Yahu'ah the Most High El, the possessor of the Shemayim in the earth, not to take a thread or a sandal strap or whatever is yours, lest you should say, I have made Abram rich, except only what the young men have eaten in the portion of the men who went with me, Aner, Eshcol, and Mamre, let them take their portion. Genesis 15. After these events, the word of Yahuwah came to Abram in a vision, saying, Do not be afraid, Abram, I am your shield. Your reward is exceedingly great. And Abram said, Master Yahuwah, what would you give me, seeing I go childless, and the heir of my house is Eleazar of Damascus? And Abram said, See, you have given me no seed, and see, one is born in my house is my heir. And see, the word of Yahuwah came to him, saying, This one is not your heir, but he who comes from your own body is your heir. And he brought him outside and said, Look now toward the Shemayim, and count the stars if you are able to count them. And he said to him, So are your seed. And he believed in Yahuwah, and he reckoned it to him for righteousness. And he said to him, I am Yahuwah who brought you out of your Kersdim to give you this land to inherit it. And he said, Master Yahuwah, whereby do I know that I possess it? And he said to him, Bring me a 3-year-old heifer, and a 3-year-old female goat, and a 3-year-old ram, and a turtle dove, and a young pigeon. And he took all of these to him, and cut them in the middle, and placed each half opposite the other, but he did not cut the birds, and the birds of prey came down on the carcasses, and Abram drove them away. And it came to be, when the sun was going down, and a deep sleep fell upon Abram, that see, a frightening great darkness fell upon him. And he said to Abram, Know for certain that your seed are to be sojourners in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them 400 years. But the nation whom they serve I am going to judge, and afterward let them come out with great possessions. Now as far as you are to go to your fathers in peace. You are to be buried at a good old age. Then in the 4th generation they shall return here, for the crookedness of the Amorites is not yet complete. And it came to be, when the sun went down, and it was dark, that see, a smoking oven and a burning torch passing between those pieces. On the same day Yahuwah made a covenant with Abram, saying, I have given this land to your seed, from the river of Mistream to the great river, the river Euphrates, with the Kenite, the Cuanite, and Quezonite, and the Quadmite, and the Hittite, and the Pizarite, and the Rephaim, and the Amorite, and the Canaanite, and the Girgashite, and the Yeshubite. chapter 16. In Sarai, Abram's wife, had borne him no child, and she had a Mistrian female servant whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, "See, Yahu'ah has kept me from bearing children. Please go into my female servant. It might be that I am built up by her." And Abram listened to the voice of Sarai. And Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, her female servant, the Mistrian, and gave her to her husband Abram to be his wife, after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, her mistress was despised in her eyes. And Sarai said to Abram, "My wrong be upon you. I gave my female servant into your bosom. And when she saw that she had conceived, I was despised in her eyes. Let Yahu'ah judge between you and me." And Abram said to Sarai, "See, your female servant is in your hand. Do to her what is good in your eyes." And Sarai treated her harshly, and she fled from her presence. And the messenger of Yahu'ah found her by a spring of water in the wilderness, by the spring on the way to Shur. And he said, "Hagar, Sarai's female servant, where have you come from, and where are you going?" And she said, "I am fleeing from the presence of Sarai, my mistress." And the messenger of Yahu'ah said to her, "Return to your mistress and humble yourself under her hand." And the messenger of Yahu'ah said to her, "I am going to increase your seed greatly, too numerous to be counted." And the messenger of Yahu'ah said to her, "See, you are conceiving and bearing a son, and shall call his name Yishmael, because Yahu'ah has heard your affliction. And he is to be a wild man, his hand against everyone, and everyone's hand against him, and dwell over against all his brothers." And she called the name of Yahu'ah who spoke to her, "You are the El who sees." For she said, "Even here I have seen after him who sees me." That is why the well was called Be'er Lahara Ro'ei. See, it is between Kadesh and Berad. And Hagar bore Abram a son, and Abram called the name of his son whom Hagar bore Yishmael. And Abram was 86 years old when Hagar bore Yishmael to Abram. Chapter 17. And it came to be, when Abram was 99 years old, that Yahu'ah appeared to Abram and said to him, "I am El Shaddai. Walk before me and be perfect. And I give my covenant between me and you, and shall greatly increase you." And Abram fell on his face. And Yahu'ah spoke to him, saying, "As for me, look, my covenant is with you, and you shall become a father of many nations. And no longer is your name called Abram, but your name shall be Abraham, because I shall make you a father of many nations. And I shall make you exceedingly fruitful, and make nations of you, and sovereigns shall come from you. And I shall establish my covenant between me and you, and your seed after you in their generations, for an everlasting covenant, to be a Yahu'ah to you and your seed after you. And I shall give to you and your seed after you the land of your sojournings, all the land of Canaan, as an everlasting possession, and I shall be their Yahu'ah." And Yahu'ah said to Abram, "As for you, guard my covenant, you and your seed after you throughout your generations. This is my covenant which you guard between me and you and your seed after you. Every male child among you is to be circumcised. And you shall circumcise the flesh of your foreskin, and it shall become a sign of the covenant between me and you. And a son of 8 days is circumcised by you. Every male child in your generations, he who is born in your house or bought with silver from any foreigner who is not of your seed. He who is born in your house and he who is bought with your silver has to be circumcised. So shall my covenant be in your flesh for an everlasting covenant. And an uncircumcised man-child who is not circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin, his life shall be cut off from his people. He has broken my covenant. And Yahu'ah said to Abraham, As for Sarai your wife, do not call her name Sarai, for Sarah is her name. And I shall baruch her and also give you a son by her. And I shall baruch her, and she shall become nations. Sovereigns of peoples are to be from her. And Abraham fell on his face and laughed, and said in his heart, Is a child born to a man who is 100 years old? Or is Sarah, who is 90 years old, to bear a child? And Abraham said to Yahu'ah, Oh, let Ishmael live before you. And Yahu'ah said, No, Sarah your wife is truly bearing a son to you, and you shall call his name Yishak. And I shall establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him. And as for Ishmael, I have heard you. See, I shall baruch him, and shall make him fruitful, and greatly increase him. He is to bring forth 12 princes, and I shall make him a great nation. But my covenant I establish with Yishak, whom Sarah is to bear to you at this appointed time next year. And he went and ended speaking with him. Yahu'ah went up from Abraham. And Abraham took Ishmael his son, and all those born in his house, and all those bought with his silver, and every male among the men of Abraham's house, and circumcised their flesh of their foreskins that same day, as Yahu'ah told him. And Abraham was 99 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. And Ishmael his son was 13 years old when he was circumcised in the flesh of his foreskin. Abraham and his son Ishmael were circumcised that same day. And all the men of his house, born to the house or bought with silver from a foreigner, were circumcised with him. Genesis chapter 18. And Yahu'ah appeared to him by the terebinth trees of Mamre, while he was sitting in the tent door in the heat of the day. So he lifted his eyes and looked, and saw 3 men standing opposite him. And when he saw them, he ran from the tent door to meet them, and bowed himself to the ground, and said, Yahu'ah, if I have now favor in your eyes, please do not pass your servant by. Please let a little water be brought, and wash your feet, and rest yourselves under the tree. And let me bring a piece of bread to refresh your hearts, and then go on, for this is why you have come to your servant. And they said, Do as you have said. So Abraham ran into the tent to Sarah and said, Hurry, make ready 3 measures of fine flour, and knead it and make cakes. And Abraham ran to the herd, took a tender and good calf, gave it to a young man, and he hurried to prepare it. And he took curds and milk and the calf which he had prepared, and set it before them. And he stood by them under the trees as they ate. And they said to him, Where is Sarah your wife? And he said, See, in the tent. And he said, I shall certainly return to you according to the time of life, and see, Sarah your wife is to have a son. And Sarah was listening in the tent door which was behind him. Now Abraham and Sarah were old, well advanced in age, and Sarah was past the way of woman. And Sarah laughed with herself, saying, After I have grown old, shall I have pleasure, my master being old too? And Yahuwah said to Abraham, Why did Sarah laugh, saying, Shall I truly have a child since I am old? Is any matter too hard for Yahuwah? At the appointed time I am going to turn to you according to the time of life, and Sarah is to have a son. But Sarah denied it, saying, I did not laugh, for she was afraid. And he said, No, but you did laugh. And then the men rose up from there and looked toward Sodom, and Abraham went with them to send them away. And Yahuwah said, Shall I hide from Abraham what I am doing, since Abraham is certainly going to become a great and mighty nation, and all the nations of the earth shall be baraked in him. For I have known him so that he commands his children and his household after him to guard the way of Yahuwah, to do righteousness and right ruling, so that Yahuwah brings to Abraham what he has spoken to him. And Yahuwah said, Because the outcry against Sodom and Amorah is great, and because their sin is very heavy, I am going down to see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry against it that has come to me, and if not, I know. So the men turned away from there and went toward Sodom, but Yahuwah stood before Abraham. And Abraham drew near and said, Would you also destroy the righteous with the wrong? Suppose there are 50 righteous within the city. Would you also destroy the place and not spare it for the 50 righteous that were in it? Far be it from you to act in this way, to slay the righteous with the wrong, so that the righteous should be as the wrong. Far be it from you. Does the judge of all the earth not do right? And Yahuwah said, If I find in Sodom 50 righteous men within the city, then I shall spare all the place for their sakes. And Abraham answered and said, Look, please, I, who am but dust and ashes, have taken upon myself to speak to Yahuwah. Suppose there are 5 less than 50 righteous, would you destroy all the city for the lack of 5? And he said, If I find there 45, I do not destroy it. And he spoke to him again and said, Suppose there are 40. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 40. And he said, Let not Yahuwah be displeased, and let me speak. Suppose there are 30. And he said, I would not do it if I only find 30 there. And he said, Look, please, I have taken upon myself to speak to Yahuwah. Suppose there are found 20. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 20. And he said, Let not Yahuwah be displeased, and let me speak only this time. Suppose there are only found 10. And he said, I would not destroy it for the sake of 10. Then Yahuwah went away as soon as he had ended speaking to Abraham. And Abraham returned to his place.